Hi, I'm Rosie. Welcome to my podcast called Yoga Pose. I'm Yoga Pose. My family used to call me Rosie Pose. I feel like the nickname made me destined to become a yoga teacher. These episodes are a chance for me to share more of myself and my journey, as well as the benefits of yoga and meditation as I see them. So expect stories, sutras, and jokes, because I think I'm pretty funny and laughing is going to help us loosen up. Yoga isn't a game, but there's no reason we can't play. So being playful stops us striving, and we become explorers simply for the pleasure of it. So this episode is called Short and Sweet because it is a shorter episode than normal, and that's because at the end, I want to invite you to use the time you'd normally spend listening to me in this Yoga Pose podcast. I want you to consider how you could live life a little sweeter. And what I mean by that will become clear in this episode. So I did something a few weeks ago that I haven't done in years. I went onto a news website. I rarely read the news because I find the headings so blunt and most of the time just terrible clickbait. You know, I don't know if they're just, like the headlines are just designed to impart a tiny bit of information. I doubt many people read the full article, or, you know, if they do they really research and read around the topic? So growing up, I was a member of a wonderful youth group called the Woodcraft Folk. I then went on to run a group when I was a little older. And Woodcraft isn't about whittling things, although I'm sure we did that. It's actually a progressive youth movement, and the aim is to have fun and to develop children's self-confidence and to build their awareness of society around them. And oh my goodness, did we have fun camping all summer in the UK and abroad. And on one of these camps, the older kids were talking to us about the war in Iraq, and that was going on at the time we were camping. I was probably about 7 and doing my best to follow a very complicated situation. I couldn't really understand all of it, but I do remember feeling really aligned with the position that the USA had taken. And that was up until one in the group asked what sorts of news would be reported in Iraq. What would the locals be saying about the violence erupting in their villages? And in that moment, I learned to question. I mean, my parents would argue that I've always questioned everything, but I mean, I really learned to consider what information I'm being given, if there's an agenda, and to take time before forming opinions. So there I was a few weeks ago on this news website, and I lasted like 30 seconds. I was scrolling around, and the headline that made me leave the site was "Reality Check: Are Migrants Driving Crime in Germany?" And as I left, I was reminded of a story that I first read in Arun Ghandi's book, The Gift of Anger. And the story goes, the Tatars are Zoroastrians, some members of an ancient religious movement that began in Persia, which is modern-day Iran. As happens so often with religions, they face terrible persecution when a different religion gained power. So in the 7th century, many had to flee the country. A boat full of refugees arrived on the west coast of India, and in an audience with the king, the Zoroastrians asked him to let them stay. But the king pointed to a glass full of water on the table, and he said, "Just as this glass is full of water, so my country is full of people. We have no room to accommodate any more." In response, the leader of the refugee delegation poured a spoonful of sugar into the water and stirred it. "Just as the sugar has dissolved into the water and sweetened it, my people will dissolve into your community and sweeten it," she replied. The king understood and allowed them to stay, and the Zoroastrian presence has sweetened the Indian community ever since. So everyone who hears this story smiles at the idea of that sweetened glass of water. But it needs to be more than a story. The king's first response is what people around the world say right now when confronted with refugees, or the poor, or those of different religions or ethnicity. So think of your own value in that glass of water, and make it your principle in life to be sure that you're always sweetening the glass. I read and share as much as I can, as it's my great pleasure to bring sweetness to those around me. And you can do the same. So share this episode. Like, why wouldn't you? Consider all the things that get shared on social media, can you just put that in an email? Like, doesn't this episode, this story from Arun Ghandi, doesn't this hold more value than those kind of messages? Speak up and share this podcast, and you're part of the sugar that sweetens the water of our community. And that's like Yaz. She did that all those years ago. She was the girl who made the comment about where we get our news. She probably doesn't remember that moment the way I did, but her short, sweet comment certainly had a lasting effect on me. Thank you so much for listening, if indeed you still are. You can visit doyouromthing.co.uk to see my teaching timetable, workshops, and retreats. I would love to connect with you in person. This podcast is about building a community, so keep reaching out to me. Do Your Om Thing is my Instagram handle and Facebook page. Before you go, think about your karma, okay? You've enjoyed this episode, hopefully as much as I've enjoyed making it for you. So help a yogini out by sharing and leaving a review. I read every single comment and they inspire me so much. I'm not kidding, please leave a review. Don't make me sell out and get sponsorship and do adverts. Thank you so much for listening to Yoga Pose.